This is one of the many reasons why Diva is one of the best analog sounding soft synths on the market, and why I am constantly using it in all of my productions, and I am not the only one. So basically, let's go and have a look at trimmers. If you have a look at this little bottom menu here that is called trimmers, you'll see 3 rows of oscillator voice detune. Each row represents a oscillator, and each oscillator, as you can see here, 1, 2, 3, has its own volume. So as you can see, the 3 rows are there, and then you've got voices. So basically the way it works is if you have 2 voices, it will play the first 2 voices, as you can see here. So let's just go ahead and do that. Let's increase that a couple of octaves. Okay, so it doesn't matter how many times I press the note or whatever the note is, it will just basically have 2 voices playing in between each other. If you go all the way to 8, it'll play all of the notes, you can see there. And then goes back to the start. And if you say go more than 8, say 12 or 16, it will just keep going. So for example, let's go all the way to 12. But it'll play, as you can see there, the second light instead of the first light until you reach the end. See, and then we'll start again at the first light. We're going to just stick to 2 voices so I can demonstrate how this works for you at the moment. So basically what we'll do is, well, you already can see here that these are automatically set, but you can just double click on them to go back to their default positions. Bring the first one right down to the left. Okay, so we're going to just play the first 2 notes. So the first one's going to be detuned to the left. You can't really notice it that much at the moment because the overall global detune amount is quite low. Let's bring that all the way to the top so you can really hear the difference. And let's bring this one all the way to the other side. They're almost playing different notes now. That's how much they've been detuned. And let's just increase the amount of voices to say 6, and we'll leave the rest alone, but we'll just detune the first 2 notes. And when you play chords, it will basically play them in the order that they need to be detuned by. So let's stick to 3 voices and play them like that. It will be much easier to play a 3 voice chord. Let's add a bit of chorus to give it a bit more of an effect. So that detuning really works, and that's how it works. So you can imagine you have now a second oscillator all the way to the top, and you've got detuning now on the second oscillator independent of the first oscillator. This is what makes it really so powerful. So let's just detune them just kind of randomly like this. Obviously now we're getting into too much territory, so we want to reduce the overall global detune amount. So that's a really cool feature. You can imagine obviously on the third oscillator, as well as you increase the volume, you can get different detuning amounts. And you can actually detune the oscillators themselves independently on top of the oscillator voice note detune. And obviously if you set the detune amount to 0, nothing is detuned. It's perfectly in tune. Now, the other thing you have is voice drift. So what that is kind of like an LFO. Instead of the note being right on tune every time you play it, it'll drift slightly, okay? And the more you make it drift, the higher the overall impact. So we've got the detune amount completely off. We're going to increase the voice drift so you can actually hear that drift. Let's increase the voices here. You can hear that drift there. Let's increase it a bit more, right to the top. So you can hear the LFOs of each drifting and never being really exactly the same note. So finally, I want to show you something called voice map modulator. So what that does is it sets modulation possibilities per note in different parts of Diva. So say, for example, just go back to 2 voices. Say, for example, the first pot is sent all the way to the right-hand side. What we can do there is we can say, for example, modulate LFO. We can modulate LFO2. So we're going to modulate this pan all the way to the right, and we're going to assign voice map to it, which is, as you can see here on the trimmer, we've set voice map to modulate all the way to the maximum amount. On the second one, we're going to have no modulation at all. So let's hear the difference. We've got a little mixer here, so we can actually see the left-right difference. So what it's doing is it's modulating the pan amount there, which is super cool. And then we can do similar things with, say, volume. Let's go to voice map. You can see I'm pressing the second note. You can't see it. But every time I press the second note, there is no volume. So we may want to just have a slight amount of volume on the second note. And I'm pressing them exactly the same way. So you can see there that this voice map or modulator modulates other parts of Diva. And not just that, you can modulate here on the cutoff section. So you've got these different control options here that you can modulate using the voice map modulator. Then finally, if we just increase this to 6, then you have something called stack. So say we select a stack of 2, it will basically play in unison 2 notes at the same time. And you'll see that by the way these lights look. So let's have a look. By the way, this is 6 voices, but it will pass through the first 2, right? So, and then it will skip through to the next 2. Right? So if you have different types of detuning amounts, it'll just pass the stack through different ranges of detuning. You can see straight away there how that would work with stack, and we just reduce this to nothing again. And you know, the more amount of stack notes you have, the more that your notes will basically play on top of each other and will give it more of a wider effect sound. If you use, say, something like a arpeggiator, so we just let this arpeggiator going here, 16 note, you can see that the different detuning amounts of the notes, you will just hear them on the arpeggiator like this. Let's take a listen. It's going pretty fast, so it's really difficult to actually hear them. But basically every note is being played left, right, panned, left, right, or whatever you want to modulate it to, as well as detuned by a certain amount. So the combination of all of that is pretty huge. Let's reduce the second oscillator. We'll just change it so it's slightly different in sound. So yeah, this is just one of the many things that makes Diva so powerful. If you've got any questions at all, put them in the comments and I'll help everyone who asks.